Today on Rise Up, we begin with looking back through history to see the same pattern repeating: prophets and messengers insulted and rejected in their time. Next, we dive into the recent Q&As from the riser. Then, Brother Kevin explores the question: was Jesus truly crucified on the cross? And finally, Sister Saiha takes a closer look at a powerful and urgent warning from Jesus to the Christians. This is Rise Up.
Welcome to Rise Up. I'm Alia Halal.
Welcome to Rise Up, the show that calls you to action.
The show that has the
Caught
name
you
that
off guard a little bit there, didn't I?
You did. We didn't even get your name, Dr. Irfan.
Yeah. If you don't know me by now, then you never will.
You can just watch the older episodes and you'll find out who he is. But yeah, Dr. Irfan, you're quite well known now, so I'm sure they know who you are.
Well, on the show I am, at least I hope. After how many episodes?
Hundreds.
200 maybe?
Quite a lot.
We've been going for a while, haven't we? I think our 1-year anniversary is coming up very soon.
Wow.
Yeah, we're breaking records.
We should probably plan for that, huh?
Yeah, let's become the longest continuous running show. And from 10 years from now, we'll still be at it.
Oh my goodness, do you think so?
Walking sticks in hand.
Hopefully, everyone will have risen up by then.
Oh, yeah.
There will be a divine
the show will still be there. Maybe you and I may necessarily be there.
It would be nice to watch Rise Up, you know? But yeah.
Going back and comparing, yes. Long journey. Back to the topic at hand.
Back to the topic. What is Rise Up about? It's about
action.
Yeah, it's a call to action. It's about telling people to rise up to the situation that is at hand, which is that humanity is in a crisis situation. People are being attacked ideologically and spiritually and physically, and we don't know which direction to go in. Without that leader that God has sent for us, we cannot know. And we say that that leader is mentioned in prophecy. He's mentioned by the prophets and messengers of old. He's someone that people were waiting for. And his name is Abdullah Hashim Abbas Sadiq. And he's mentioned in the will of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, by the name of Abdullah. Now, we've mentioned so many different pieces of evidence from different books and scriptures about the riser Abbas Sadiq. And we will continue to do that because it never ends. There's so much to go into. But part of Rise Up is also about going into his teachings, going into his knowledge that he has displayed, that he has given to the world. And that's what we do here on Rise Up.
Yeah, I think anybody who follows the news can see that there are many things that are happening which is closely, or very, very certainly is taking us in the direction of a global conflict. There are plagues and diseases on the horizon that the scientists and biologists and virologists are talking about, and the urgent need for action. We were talking with Sister Hadil about the urgent action sirens that have gone off in the Middle East, in Egypt in particular, with respect to the treatment of the members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, those people who uphold that monotheism is the recognition and worship of God through a veil of His appointment and choosing. And this is setting off all kinds of problems. Apparently this is against the teachings of Islam, Christianity and Judaism. But when you look at the scripture, when you really get to the nuts and bolts of the teachings that are in the holy books, you can see that monotheism is indeed the recognition that God gives of His attributes and His wisdom and knowledge that feeds us all through the prophets and the messengers, through people like Abraham, Moses, Jesus and Muhammad, whom we believe were all true messengers of the one God. What differentiates us is that we believe that through rejecting the messenger, through rejecting the veil, one can actually reject God. So we always say to those people who are listening, are you a true monotheist? Do you claim to be a monotheist? If you claim to be a monotheist, then what is the definition of monotheism? Not according to you or a scholar sitting on the pulpit claiming to be the true vicegerent of the prophets and the messengers, but monotheism according to God, according to the Gospels, according to the Quran, according to the Torah. And when you examine these books, the definition becomes very apparent very quickly. And that is the fact that the God that has no human form or attributes, He manifests through a creation.
Yes.
And faces creation with another creation. And this is the great test. And the first one to fail this test was Iblis, the devil. And this is what made him from the accursed and made him from the outcast. And all those who follow in that decision that he made to reject the Caliph of God, they end up just like him, with him, and from among him. And this is what we always try and bring people to realize on the show, that if you are not following and submitting to God by accepting his true Caliph, then you are following in the footsteps of Iblis, Lanatullahi alayh. So if you're watching the show, you can see that we bring up these topics repetitiously because we believe that the call of God is actually very simple. We think that the only way that people will realize the truth is to call in and engage with people, and to get in touch with people, and to ask those questions that are holding you back. And sometimes, well, all the times really, you can boil it down to fear, you can boil it down to ignorance, and it's just the same things, and you have to smash these idols like Abraham did. And when you smash the idols, the truth becomes manifest. And the truth is that there is no God but Allah, the one God, and he is known through a messenger of his appointment. And this is the definition of monotheism in a nutshell.
Yes, and monotheism is not something that we can fully grasp by ourselves. It's a very, very deep and complex subject that it's not just something to know about and to believe in, but also to apply. And that's something that Abu Sadiq has brought forward and really implemented amongst the believers who are pledging allegiance to him around the world. Monotheism is not a simple matter of knowing that there is one God as people think it is. It's about knowing how to apply that in action on earth, and how to actually be true monotheists, not people who pray 5 times a day and say that they believe in one God and that's enough. That's really not enough at all for God. And these rituals can be very dead and very dangerous if you keep dragging them around like a dead corpse that is just tied to us. We cannot do that. We have to actually start doing something that will change the course of action in general for the world and for people. And that's what monotheism is about. It's about change, it's about transformation, and it's about knowing how to apply that through the man that God has appointed. Because that is the focal point. That's the singular focal point for everyone. And adhering to many guides or many different focal points is polytheism. Yeah. And that's what the narrations say. And that's what's very interesting. If you actually go into the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, you'll find that the idea of shirk or polytheism is not what people think it is. They think it's about, yes, for sure, you cannot be worshipping idols. You cannot make idols made out of dates and worship them like Umar ibn al-Khattab used to do before the advent of Islam. But the definition of shirk or polytheism, as given by Imam Jafar Sadiq, is essentially to be following those who have not been appointed by God. Isn't that interesting? That's the real definition. Because it becomes worship when you start obeying and taking from someone that God has not appointed. You're essentially worshipping them. And that's what the Holy Quran says as well. When it talks about those people who say that we didn't worship them, we were just listening to them, our rabbis and our scholars and our monks and priests. And God will say, because you were obeying them, you worshipped them besides God. So it's a very interesting thing that's happening these days, where people think they're religious or they're monotheistic or that they're following an Abrahamic faith because they have rituals or they have a dress code. But that's not enough to identify who you are. You can be doing all that stuff, but then essentially what you're doing is you're following a corrupted version of the religion. Yeah. You cannot say that you're following the authentic original religion that came down once upon a time on Jesus Christ or on Muhammad or on Moses. You have to admit that this is a newfound thing that you're doing that is actually created by scholars. That's the black and white harsh reality of the situation.
Yeah, the intermediary plays a very significant role in religion. Yeah. It's that individual who stands between you and God. What the devil did is that he played a very big, he played out a really good psyop actually. What he said was, monotheism is actually removing the intermediary, and then you're worshipping God directly. I mean, who is Adam to stand in your way when you can have a one-to-one with God? But God is saying, no, you must prostrate to Adam. You must obey this person because my command comes through him, and herein lies the test. Can you submit to a person who in the apparent resembles yourself? And this is something Iblis could not do, and every Muslim and Christian and any monotheist, any Abrahamic a person who follows an Abrahamic religion knows that Satan became the fallen angel once he rejected and fought against the Caliph of God, the first man, Adam, peace be upon him, who brought the first covenant to humanity. And there is a big lesson in this. If you are somebody who is saying, I don't need an intermediary, well, you do need an intermediary, because God is saying this is one of the conditions that must be fulfilled before you can have any kind of relationship with him. This is not something we have concocted here, or Abba Sadiq has decided to come up from his own self. This is something that God is telling you in your own books. If you remove the Adam and go to God, this is something that breaks that tradition of monotheism. And actually, like Alia said, it takes you into shirk. And this is something Iblis knows, and he's been implementing this plan for a very, very long time, and has become quite proficient at it. And
that's a very, very good analysis of the situation, I think, Dr. Irfan. Like, it's not a matter of, hey, if you just worship God in any shape or form, it'll work out for you. It doesn't, because then Iblis would have had that card that he could have used and said, hey, I have been worshipping you, so it should be enough. But it wasn't enough, was it? And anyone who has some kind of background of religious scripture or has read the Holy Quran will understand what we're talking about here. This story is a well-known story, the story of Adam and Iblis, and God saying prostrate to Adam and then Iblis refusing. This is a well-known story in Islam, and it's also found in apocryphal texts in Christianity and Judaism. But the idea here is that the intermediary is necessary for you to be a monotheist. And I think that's so incredible. And, you know, defying that concept is very naive, because the fact of the matter is everyone ends up with an intermediary of some sort anyway. That's the whole you can't fight it. Irony of it, isn't it? And now if somebody says, well, Alia, I believe that Prophet Muhammad was my intermediary, and that's it, it's done. How? But he's not here for you to speak to, and that's why you end up going to other people, right? If he were there for you, you wouldn't go to Sistani. Yes. You wouldn't go to Asrar Rashid. Yes. You know, you wouldn't go to Amar Nakshwani. You wouldn't go to these people that are sitting there saying, I will tell you about religion. Let me sit here and speak in this magnificent manner so that you feel like I'm very superior and you can actually keep filling my bank accounts. I mean, there are scholars out there that are that have this web page that they've got designed for themselves, and they allow you to have Zoom meetings with them for £50 an hour maybe, or £100 an hour, or what on earth are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, that's your intermediary that you have chosen, whether you like it or not. That's what you're doing, right? And it's inevitable that they choose. It's inevitable, because times change. And again, the second great trick of the devil was that he said these intermediaries are these individuals, the scholars of religion. They're the ones who have learned and memorized the scripture, and they know the narrations, and therefore you must submit to them. You need them. You can't do it without them. You have to have those scholars. This is the rhetoric that you keep hearing, right? Absolutely. And because Satan knows that there must be an imam in every time, all he's done is he's taken the imama of the true imam and given it to the false ones. Abba Sadiq gave a very simple criteria to distinguish between the true and the false imam, the true pope and the real pope. He said, ask them one question, that's it. He said, have you been appointed by God? If they say yes, then you say, where is your proof? And then it becomes very apparent very quickly if they are appointed by God. If they're telling the truth, if they're honest, they will say, no, I'm not. Well, then Abba Sadiq says, well, thank you very much, and have a nice life. Exactly. I don't need to listen to you. I don't need to take from you, because you're not appointed by God. Now, we're not saying that knowledge is not needed. We're not saying that scholarly knowledge is not required. Yes. Of course it is. In fact, that's all we talk about, is what's in the books and what it means, and that's all that Abba Sadiq is talking about. But no one has a right to decide they're a scholar and then transform religion based on that and tell you what's right from wrong and decide what's right from wrong. That's exactly what the rabbis and the monks and the priests in the Holy Quran were rebuked for, and people were rebuked for listening to them. So why is it that now scholars of Islam are deciding that they can sit there and tell you the halal from the haram? They can tell you, they can answer the most ludicrous of questions, which my favorite so far has always been the M&M question. Are red M&Ms halal or haram? And this very critical question was posed to scholars, who, some of whom said, I think, that it wasn't good because they have their reasons. I don't even want to go into it. I actually know their reasons, but that's not the topic today. And some say it is halal. So where does that come from? What kind of, like, are they able to message God on their phones and get an answer directly from heaven? Who are they to decide what's right or wrong? What if they're wrong? And they know that. And that's why there's this little thing that they do every single time where they will end their answer with, and Allah knows best. Wallahu alam. Right? Why? Because that's kind of their cheat card to say, well, I never said I know. I said God knows. I don't know anything. Then why are we coming to you? You know? So it's really the fault of the people when they go to an individual who hasn't been appointed and is basically admitting that they haven't got knowledge of the unseen. Yet we're asking them about matters of the unseen. That's the issue here.
Yeah, it's you can see how Satan has rigged the game up. If you're somebody who is humble, you go to a scholar now, like Sister Alia said, you can certainly read and learn from people. We're not saying that at all. I mean, to discuss the narrations of the Prophet Muhammad is something I enjoyed very much when I was growing up, and I learned a lot from many people who were quote-unquote scholars, in the sense that they would talk about narrations, they would talk about verses from the Quran, they would see what the Prophet said about these things. This is fine. What we're saying is that if you give your bay'ah, to somebody who you take as a spiritual guide and teacher, when it's a question of your soul's salvation, then this is where it becomes a real problematic area. Because now, not only are you giving money and support to somebody who has not been appointed by God, but you are putting your hereafter in their hands.
Yes.
Because at the end of it all, the religion is what? Religion and scripture is a roadmap to reach a certain spiritual destination, to reach that state of enlightenment, to reach true knowledge of God, to have a connection with God. Otherwise, what is religion but just outward practices that have absolutely no bearing on reality? What is you sitting on a prayer mat doing 1,000 prostrations going to do to benefit the world? You know, that you were put into this world to serve God by serving His creation. It does nothing. So now it is you doing nothing but just carrying books on your back like the donkeys, like the Quran describes, which are the non-working scholars. You need a living Imam who holds your hand, who guides you through the maze of dunya and takes you through the trials and tribulations by preparing you for them. A true spiritual master, a true teacher who can help you navigate that journey, because he himself has completed that spiritual journey. And those people who have this pull to go in this direction, they often go, if they're Muslims, into Sufism. If they're Christians, they go into Gnostic Christianity. If they're Jews, they go into the Kabbalah, and so on and so forth. For those people who really understand that it is a change or shift in consciousness, this awareness of the presence of God at all times, for those people who yearn for that, then these scholars of misguidance, they will never take you in that direction. In fact, they'll take you in the complete opposite direction. And this is what we are we find it is really important to highlight this fact.
Yeah. And we take only from the one that has been appointed by God, and we're very fortunate that we are people who've understood that now. And this is what we want people to understand outside. We want everyone who's listening to us to realize that there is more that you can hope for. You can have a much higher standard for yourselves. You don't have to settle for the idea of going along with the notions of fallible men who don't know, who are just gambling in the dark and hoping that they get it right, and trying to make a very sizable paycheck at the same time. So let's go ahead and see what it is that Abu Sadiq himself is teaching the world these days. That's what we like to do here on Rise Up especially, which is going through the Sacred Dialogue segment, going through the Q&As that Abu Sadiq has been delivering to the world at large. And we do this knowing that whatever comes to us from Abu Sadiq is actually divine revelation. It's something worth listening to. It's something worth actually pondering over and learning about and applying.
Yeah,
we're not just hoping that it's the truth, right?
Yes.
We know it is, because he has a letter of appointment. And what is better than that, to listen to or to follow? Who would be better than that person? Should we go ahead into the first?
Let's launch it.
Let's launch it. Let's go ahead. Abu Sadiq, there are these individuals who have appeared online. They've been making allegations against yourself and against this call and against our community. And as you have stated recently, these allegations are false. They're not based on any evidence. And then there is the crowd that would say, well, based on these false allegations or accusations, there might be something wrong with this religion or this call. Is that a reason to stay away from this call? Is that a reason to reject the successor of Imam al-Mahdi or the person bringing this call forward, these ideas or false allegations?
Well, I think that it's quite funny coming from Muslims, Christians, and Jews that they would even consider that the existence of slander, libel, false accusations, or even if they were real accusations, which I certainly deny all of them, and I consider actually that most of them are not even worth responding to. But whether they thought that they were real or not real, if they were going to deny me on that basis or X me out, they should go ahead and X out the Quran and the Gospels and the Tanakh or the Torah, especially because pretty much all of the holy figures that exist in these religions are surrounded with scandals and sins and mistakes and accusations, and they themselves have been accused falsely according to many narrations. You have creation starting off with Adam basically renegating and betraying the trust of God and going directly against the commandment of God. You have an episode with Noah in which basically he gets drunk, he passes out, and one of his sons basically uncovers his nakedness and he gets really upset about that. You have an episode where Prophet Lot is sleeping with his two daughters in the Torah. You have an episode basically where Abraham seemingly is giving his wife to Pharaoh in exchange for riches and things of this sort. You have certain individuals like Jacob basically pulling a fast one and deceiving his father in order that he may steal the blessings away from his brother. You have basically Joseph being accused of attempting to rape or attempting to fornicate or commit adultery, and he was accused of that, and he was falsely imprisoned due to that. And so imagine that story. Here's a prophet. He's accused of a sexual deed that he didn't do. What does that prove? And then in the end, he went to jail. He was actually a convict, and he ended up being released from that. And in the end, God is the one whom basically cleared his slate in the very end and proved his innocence to everybody. So you have scandals after scandals after scandals. You have Judah sleeping basically with his son's wife, who was dressed up as a prostitute. And this same Tamar who slept with Judah while disguising herself as a prostitute in the Bible, this same woman ends up becoming the great ancestor of Jesus Christ. So there she was a prostitute committing fornication with her father-in-law, and she ends up being the great ancestor of Jesus, the Messiah. Another prostitute was also one of the ancestors of Jesus Christ, and that was Rahab, right?
Yes.
Who was responsible for the fall of the city of Jericho in the time of Joshua, son of Nun. There are narrations in both Judaism and also in Islam that state that Moses was falsely accused by women, that the Samari or the arch nemesis of Moses in that time actually paid an Israelite woman to accuse Moses of having slept with her in an attempt to discredit him and bring great shame upon him. And then in the end, the woman confessed that she was paid to do so, or to falsely accuse. So these types of false accusations, allegations, and sexual scandals in general, they have always been associated with the prophets and the messengers. And even in the religion of Islam, for 1400 years, they've been accusing the Prophet Muhammad of having slept with a 6-year-old girl. And obviously, you also have the story of the Prophet Muhammad marrying the wife of his adopted son, Zayd. And so, what does any of that prove? Like, if accusations and allegations around the Mahdi or a Mahdi claimant disproves his claim, then they also need to not be hypocrites, and they have to review themselves and review the scandals that are associated with their prophets and their messengers in their books, and decide whether or not this is sufficient to disprove them or not. And we have to judge by the same scale.
I think that's extremely fair, Basadik. You've put the proof on the people by saying that the scriptures are filled with these stories, but they don't mean that those men are not from God. That's not how you'd identify it.
And it doesn't mean that the stories are true, too. And that's certainly what Muslims believe, right? They believe that all of these stories that are in the Torah are false, that they were made up, that this was some of the corruption that took place, slander in order to discredit the prophets and the messengers. They believe that to be the case in the story of Lot. They also believe it to be the case in the story of David. And David's story is filled with scandals. I mean, my goodness gracious, David, he was looking out the window. He finds a woman that's bathing. She's beautiful. He wants her. She's married. He takes her anyway, brings her to the castle. He impregnates her. He ends up basically killing or commanding the death of the loyal soldier who was her husband in order that the scandal is not made public. Then he ends up taking her as a wife, and she ends up becoming actually the mother of another vicegerent of God, and that is King Solomon. So what are they even talking about? What are they talking about? They should say nothing in regards to allegations of sexual scandals. This is totally normal. It would be abnormal for a messenger to come and not be associated with particular scandals like this, because they have always slandered the prophets and messengers, and or some of them might have actually committed some of these things, but it still didn't discredit them as individuals. And the other types of allegations of he was wanted or not wanted. I mean, first off, I don't even have anything on my record, and people are free to go and search. Being sued in a civil case in the United States for something while I was not even in the country. I didn't even know that I was being sued. It's a civil case. There's no misdemeanors or felonies that are put on your record. Civil suits, people can allege whatever it is that they want to allege. At the end of the day, it's just a little civil lawsuit between individuals. And I wasn't even in the country at the time. I never received any summons to any civil case. But let's say I had. Let's say I was guilty of all those crimes that they accused me of and more. I mean, like we demonstrated earlier, Joseph was guilty in the courts of Egypt of the sin of adultery, and he was placed in prison, even though he was innocent. You also had a fugitive by the name of Moses, who had killed an Egyptian, and he was wanted for murder by the state of Egypt, and he escaped. He was a fugitive. He was running away. So the people that say, oh, the Mahdi is a fugitive, or this guy's a fugitive, I don't think God would send somebody who is a fugitive, then why did he send Moses, if that's the case? So they, obviously, it demonstrates that they have a lack of knowledge of their own books. So they don't even know what it is that they're talking about, let alone do they know what is expected and what is written from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad surrounding the character of the Mahdi.
Yes, Sadiq. And in the same Sunnah of Abraham, you crush the idols of today. And those who want to accuse you of that are basically saying that they stand by those false idols, and they're accusing themselves, really. And I do want to say that you have shown and expressed the greatest patience and the greatest grace by even answering any of these allegations, which are completely false. And we really thank you for that, because many wouldn't have. But you, as you always have been very merciful, are addressing these, and it means a lot. It really does.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is a segment that we've actually played before.
Yeah.
And I think it was important that we play it back again today. Why? Because Abu Sadiq has released very recently a very, I'll call it a heavy-duty lecture, and that had to do with certain allegations that are made against Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, in this one, you just saw right there, he was speaking about and commenting on the fact that there are allegations made against Abu Sadiq. So there is a very clear pattern that we're seeing. We're seeing this pattern of attacks being directed towards men sent by God. And the fact of the matter is that when you look at how Abu Sadiq tackles these allegations, when you look at how he responds to the slander, it is so fascinating. Because he, essentially what he does is, unlike other people who would just try to pretend it's not happening or turn their back to it, and they'd be like, no, this is all very toxic, I don't want to look at it, I don't want to think about it. He says, hey, let's talk about it. And then he goes and he takes all the books and all the scriptures and he says, let's look at what's in the books. And what do you find? You don't find a cute little story or a fairy tale. You actually find some very strange writings. You find some very controversial teachings. You find very disturbing events happening, incidents taking place. You find accusations made, whether true or not, as Abu Sadiq said in the segment there, against prophets and messengers. So what does that mean? Basically, that means that we can't just say that something is wrong or something is right, because then what you're saying is you yourself are also on the same measurement or standard, and you cannot be, because all prophets and messengers have something in their history that people could point fingers to. As Abu Sadiq said there, people could point fingers at David. Now what shall we do? Shall we no longer say that David is a prophet of God? Are all the Jews wrong about David and the Christians and the Muslims? What about Prophet Joseph? What about Prophet Musa alayhi salam or Moses? So the fact of the matter is that it's not about, well, they did this, therefore this. There is so much context and there's so much more to the story that has to be realized. And Prophet Muhammad was accused of terrible things. And that's why in the Holy Quran, verses are present which were revealed, where God says to Prophet Muhammad that there are people who are slandering you and there will be something very bad that will happen to them in the aftermath of that, because it is slander. So we're living in a very strange period of the dawah, right, where there's so much, this viral phenomenon is taking place. People are aware of the dawah, they're hearing that the Mahdi has appeared, and I think that the reflex response of attacking the prophets and the messengers is something that we're witnessing and experiencing so much, and Abu Sadiq had the grace to answer that.
Yeah, and it's something that the mainstream media, the different platforms are all getting us prepared to reject the messenger of God by the slew of movies and TV shows, and where they always ridicule that spiritual guru or leader as a nutcase who is a psychopath and who is a self-worshipping entity, and it creates this great deal of antipathy towards somebody who would then claim to be a spiritual guide or a Mahdi. So everything is set up, the stage is set for the believers to enter that phase where holding on to true faith is like holding on to hot coal, as the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt warned us. And this is the time we live in. Everything has been set up for you to fail, but this is why Abu Sadiq created these platforms, so that people can learn the truth, recognize and know the Imam according to the criteria that God gave, and apply it. Most importantly, application of knowledge is what Abu Sadiq emphasizes above and beyond anything else, because it is what distinguishes a working scholar from a non-working scholar.
I think it's interesting that you brought movies up, because I have been seeing things with a different lens ever since the Dawah came, and we're learning about these different concepts. And something that really struck me was, like you said, there are these movies that are made and they're super popular and people love them and they watch them and they are very interesting, they are very well made. But there's a very fascinating storyline always where the bad guy, the villain, he has these demands or he has these stances where he says, the current system is bad, we need to change it. And suddenly there are all these good guys who are like, we cannot allow him to change the system. This amazing system that is running currently, we must allow it to continue, and we have to get rid of this villain.
The preservation of humanity depends on it.
Yes. And what is the system? It's the system of the ultra-rich. It's the system of those who are leeching off of the poor. I mean, the system is not good right now. And yet they're saying, no, we have to allow commercialism and capitalism. Why are you changing it? Whether it's X-Men or Avengers or whatever it might be. Or the villain will say, obedience is to the one appointed, right? I am appointed over you, and obedience is to myself. Now, we're not saying that these villains are appointed in a divine capacity, but the concept of obedience to a divinely appointed individual is very much present in religion. And yet, there's this fear of obedience to the messenger of God. And the word obedience has garnered this very negative reputation.
Really,
and people say, no, they want us to obey, that's not okay, we have to get rid of them now. But that's what people were doing with Moses. That's what they were supposed to do with Jesus Christ the Messiah, and they didn't do it with him. That's what the Muslims believe is necessary to do with Muhammad, or you're not a Muslim. The Quran says obey Allah and obey the messenger. The word obey is essential. It is a part of being a monotheist. You have to obey or you're not a monotheist, or you're basically worshipping yourself. This is part of religious heritage.
Yes.
But nowadays, it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah, again, because
What's that about?
It's called mind programming. It's a system that's very well known to intelligence agencies, and they do it subliminally and they do it openly, and they do it in movies where somebody has these glasses and they put on and they look at the poster that's up there and it says obey. Oh, what a terrible word that is. It's called giving up civil liberties and this, that, the other, and it again, it just twists the truth.
Yes.
This is what the Iblis and the devil and his forces are so good at doing. They twist the truth. Obedience to God and his messenger is for your own benefit. Like I said yesterday, when we are born in the spiritual world, this is what, every now and then though, a very good film does get through.
Yeah.
That has so many, amongst all the trash out there and all the mind programming
Good
and psyops.
lessons are in there. And
yes. Like in the Matrix, when Neo wakes up, he's like in this pod.
Undeniably, yeah.
And he's completely helpless in this. It's like a rebirth, right? In this thing where he's born into this pod, he's being used by the system, he's having his energy sapped, which is basically working to maintain and uphold the system that you were born into, but that is using you, leeching off of you, taking your taxes and your money and your life, literally your life energy away from you. He wakes up as a baby because even though he's an adult, he cannot move a single muscle because he's never used his physical body. He needs Morpheus, the father figure. He needs the people to help him to see. He can't open his eyes. He's completely helpless. And this is exactly how the spiritual journey begins for those people who seek awakening. You need somebody to fish you out of this mire, this quagmire that is the material world, and then you have to go through a process of teaching. And if we hadn't recognized and followed the Morpheus, the true Imam of the time, we would certainly have drowned in the world. And this is again shown where he has dropped off into this thing and he's literally drowning, and he's fished up into this light because he recognized the Imam of his time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've mentioned Lord of the Rings as another one, which is a really, really good trilogy to watch. And there are lessons for sure that you can pick up, and everything is the way you see it, of course. You can see goodness in what you are watching or listening to, and you can derive good lessons from these things as well.
And where do we get this ability? Like to watch and really analyze films from Abba Sadiq, from Taz the first semester.
Oh my goodness.
And then I became very acutely aware of what are they trying to program me with during this film.
Yeah, because he shows you what is happening, and then you realize that you can study what you're watching and you can actually understand what they're, like you said, programming you with.
Yeah.
It's so important.
The ancient Greek philosophers spoke about this. I mean, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle said that we cannot use these plays, for example, that were being made by Homer, the Iliad, etc., etc. He said this is a form of mind programming. He says they're using.
Then even imagine.
This is exactly. They were called the sophists, right? And they were making these, writing these elaborate plays. He says, look, this is negatively implanting ideas through the use of emotions, through the use of the medium of that time, where people didn't obviously have televisions and things, but they were using plays to get these ideas. He said, this is why we lost the battle to the Spartans, because it's showing us that this is a good attribute, whereas clearly reason and logic tells us this is a bad attribute. And this is why they killed Socrates with hemlock. This is why they chased out Aristotle. This is why Plato had to go become a recluse, because they were called the gadflies of Athens and nobody wanted them. And this is the treatment of the prophets and the messengers. But when you treat them like this, when you reject them, you reject the very light of God that was sent to take you out of the hellish world that we live in.
Isn't it interesting? I always thought this part of the story of Plato's cave is very, very interesting. The fact that the people are chained up, they're looking at the wall, and the wall has these shadows, right? They're watching these shadows that are moving, and they're learning what they're being programmed. But that's the strange thing. There is someone, there's an entity that is creating some sort of illusion and is feeding it to these chained people, meaning that the idea of constantly being programmed has always been there. There's always been an entity that has tried to manipulate people into going along with their narrative, even though it's not as obvious as it might seem. And that's very interesting. That's the way of Iblis. That's the way of the devil. He's been doing that from the very beginning. It's even in the analogy of the cave.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, there's a really interesting philosopher. His name is Immanuel Kant. I won't get too much into it, but what I will say is that a lot of Kantian philosophy was taken to write the Matrix, right? It was an amalgamation of the philosophical views that come from all these ancient philosophers and modern philosophers. He was actually in the last 300 years. But he basically said this. He said that the reality that we perceive that is out there is not something that we can control. He says we are a filter and we only see that which we are capable of seeing or have been programmed to see. He said if we could have influence on what is out there, then we could manipulate it and make it as we will. Now, Kant said because we cannot do this, because we are not capable of changing what is out there, we have therefore, and he concluded, and he showed this very, very interesting and logically, he showed that we can only perceive according to the filter that is built in our mind. And this is done through these programming methods that have been coming on since the time of Adam, all the way now into the modern age where it's reached a very sophisticated level. But this is where it gets interesting.
That's so strange.
Because there is one person in every age that does have the ability to manipulate the reality that we perceive. So Kant was partly right. He's like, look, we are slaves in the sense that we have no control to change, but the Imam of the time, God's vicegerent who has the Holy Spirit with him, does have the ability to change the world that is outside. Whereas we are born in a state of blindness, the Imam can see and change things that are out there. Now, if you have a certain group of people who are all being taught to think in a certain way, the reason is very simple, so that they can maintain the current present structures of the world. These doctrines of capitalism and injustice and feeling helpless, these things are projected by us because that is what our filter sees. We see ourselves as powerless. However, when we connect to the Holy Spirit that is in a man like Jesus or Muhammad, or in this day and age, Abdullah Hashim Abbas Sadiq, then we have an ability through connection to him to change that reality. We're having this conversation, weren't we?
That's so amazing. We were, yes.
That the observer effect in physics,
it's a real thing.
It's a real thing, and it's something with the Schrodinger's cat experiment. The fact that reality is unset jello, except for when an observer looks at it. So everything is just pure potential. It is like energy that is just spread all over space. This is quantum physics. It's not me making this up.
It sounds amazing though.
Right? Unset reality, unset jello. Then somebody looks at it and suddenly it becomes fixed in point in space and time. The structures of the mind through space and time give this energy that's everywhere a precise location. Energy becomes mass. And immaterial becomes material. Now, if we say that the Caliph of God, the one with the Holy Spirit, is the observer, then we connect to him. Isn't it interesting that in order for him to rise and control the reality that exists outside, he needs 10,313 conscious observers who are connected to him, and then the world changes and we enter into the divine just state.
It's so interesting that
it's a condition that has to be fulfilled, and there's a reason for it. And yeah, this is something Abbas Sadiq, he kind of alludes to and gives us that little kernel of knowledge so that we can think and ponder and reflect on this. So we need to get to that number quickly. And this means that we need 10,313 dedicated, devoted, conscious observers who are submissive to the Imam. If we can put our focus and energy onto him, God will give him that great opening, which inshallah comes very soon.
Isn't it incredible that this individual, this man, is liberating people to the extent that we're able to create the reality we need? We are able to create a world that is better than this.
Yes.
We are able. He's giving us the ability.
It is impossible without him.
It is impossible without him. He's the source. He's the spirit. He's the one who is creating that ability within us.
Yeah.
But we have it. That's what's so remarkable about this phase. We are a people that can make that kingdom of heaven on earth. And when people hear that, a lot of times when they hear that, they mock it. They laugh. They say no. Why are you saying that there's light out of this cave? Let us stay chained to the cave walls and just look at the shadows as we've been doing for centuries. And we don't want to get out of here. We want to stay trapped in an illusion till we die. And we're saying there's so much more. And we know that because we've seen it. We've gone out of the cave. We have looked at the sunlight and we are so amazed by what we've seen that we want to get everyone out there too. And then Abu Sadiq says, go and be fishers of men, like Jesus Christ had said. Go and find the people out there who want change, who are able to fight through the status quo and say, I don't like this matrix. I actually don't like this program that we're stuck in. And it's so superficial and it's so vile and it's so cold and heartless. Let's change it, make it better, because we can. Like you said, the potential is there. All we have to do is do something good with it.
And the key thing to highlight and point out is that even if all 8 billion human beings got together and started consciously observing, and they would not be able to do so without the Imam of the time. He is that condition that God made, that if you want to change this reality and completely rewire the matrix, you need the Imam of the time. He is the supreme capstone without which all observation is completely meaningless. And this is this is why God said you must prostrate to a point. You know, there's a prayer by Imam Ahmad al-Hasan alayhi salam. It's a prayer of the Gnostics. It's really rooted deeply in the Gnostic understanding of monotheism. And he describes, he says in his prayer, which is of the prayer that you recite 12 times to improve your memory, he said, by the truth of the one who does not exist in any place or space. Right? So the idea of God as a non-local being, you cannot confine him by space and time. Now, this is why Adam is necessary, and why Adam is the Qibla, why you must be pointed in one direction, together, unitedly, pointing to the Adam or the Caliph or God's chosen, appointed Imam at one time. When you do this, you literally cause change. You enter into a new reality. And this is why all the prophets and the messengers had to return, give their allegiance to the Imam of the time, and get behind him 100% with everything that they have, all their energy, all their love, all their feeling, all their focus. And that is the only way the divine just state is ushered in, by changing the very structures of the world that we see. And
that means that people are very responsible. There's a lot of burden on our shoulders. So we are expected to be a certain way. We're expected by God to wake up, to rise up, to understand that there's something that we are meant to be doing as well. We have a part in this. We have a role to play. And that means that, okay, how do we do that role? People sometimes, we do get this a lot. We get a lot of people who call in or write in and they say, okay, what should I do? How do I help? There's no other way to help. This is the only way to really help people. It is to get behind the leader, get behind the man that is sent for helping us, and take his lead, understand what it is that he's saying, take the guidance that he is giving. Put on that hat that he gives you. He'll give you a role and say, I need you to do such and such, I need you to say such and such, and just go along with that and see the wonders that come from it, because it will be such a wondrous, miraculous life if we only just walk behind the man who is a walking miracle, which he is. And he is the one who creates, he's the one who transforms, he's the one who can take us somewhere better. He really is. And I mean, that's what we're seeing, isn't it?
Yeah, he is. He's taking us through all of these different challenges, and he's nurturing us. He is feeding us spiritually. And he wants 10,313 believers.
That's the magic number, right? I think what you said is so important. I think that we could repeat it over and over, and it doesn't sink in immediately. It's something that takes time to process. And that is that the reason there's a Qibla, the reason there's an Adam, is because, as you said, God cannot be confined to a space. God cannot be confined to a timeline. He is all-encompassing. So in order to find him, in order to have a focal point, you have to have his vicegerent on earth. You have to. He has to be that point that you look at and you direct yourselves towards. And subhanAllah, how we started the conversation initially by saying you need an intermediary. Why else would you need the intermediary? There's this incredible fact that was mentioned in the Book of Monotheism, which again is written by Ahmad al-Hasan. I really hope that you guys go ahead and read it. It's on the website. So in the Book of Monotheism, there's this fact that is established that I remember when I heard it the first time, I was amazed, because only a man from God can really explain these things, right? He says that God is so great and so infinitely great that we cannot describe him. And yet, as people, we tend to describe him as one God. So we confine him to a numerical value. We say one God. And that number one is a limiting factor. We're not saying there's more than one God, but we only understand things in that way, in that linear fashion as human beings. So God in his mercy is allowing us to say there is one God. But the fact is, he's so much greater than that perspective. And we cannot grasp it. So what do? He has to send a man that we can see, that we can hear, that we can understand, who can understand ourselves as well. And then he can help us walk with him. Just the fact that we say there is one God is actually not a very good thing to do, but we have to, because how else do we describe him? Right?
So Abba Sadiq describes monotheism in a beautiful way. He says monotheism is the worship of God through one man.
Exactly.
In one time.
Exactly.
So that number one applies to the veil that God wears in every time, and that is one. And to recognize him is to recognize God. There are some secrets in the book of monotheism for those who the Imam alayhi salam in the book, he writes an amazing hadith, which I think is one of the great treasures of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. He says that our Shia are those who, if they're given a seedling of knowledge, they take that seed, they water it and they nurture it, and then they have knowledge that comes out of it. They branch this seed out into the tree that it becomes. In other words, they take our knowledge, they apply it, they ponder on it, and then they derive truth from it. And he says these are the best among our Shia. And then Ahmad al-Hassan from his piece continues to elaborate on the topic of monotheism and the attributes of God and what is this and what is that. And there's many truths in it. And I think for those people, the reason I'm not going into specifics is because the way the Imam has structured the book. He builds a foundation, then he shows you two extremes, one leaving monotheism through an extremeness of to the point where you reject the intermediary, and the other extreme becoming basically mushriks and polytheists. And then he takes you on this journey towards understanding monotheism. And the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet Muhammad, they're essentially teaching monotheism. This is their speciality topic. And like Alia said, it's a very complex one. It's also a very dangerous one, because when you read the book of monotheism, you can see how easy it is to go to one extreme from the other. So therefore, you need somebody to guide you in every age through the challenges of that specific age to reach your goal, which is God through one man. Which
is such a mercy. How could we do it without that? You can't really do it on your own. No one can do it on their own. We need that guide. My goodness, I think we we did a lot of
talking,
topic hopping after that Sacred Dialogue segment.
Which is why it was so important to replay.
There you go. But I really think that, I hope that people can really ponder over what you said there, which is the fact that that's the only way to really find that all-encompassing God. You need a focal point. Where do you start?
Exactly.
You need the compass to point somewhere.
And what can the observer can't, the observer has to observe a specific point. You know, there are narrations that I read about the true salah and the importance of focusing on one point during the standing up in prayer, right? Again, it just re-emphasizes that there needs to be something that you point to. How can you put attention without having a place to put that attention?
And how can you do it as a whole if everyone's looking in another direction, which they are now, right? People say they're looking at one God, they're looking towards one God, but they have all these different scholars they're looking at, so everyone is just kind of looking in different directions, thinking that they're going towards one God, but it doesn't work like that. Let's go on to the next Sacred Dialogue segment and see what we end up talking about after that.
So I've seen here a comment under one of your video. I think someone is very confused, and I think this is an answer from you. So it says, has he just taken aspects of all religions and put them in a soup? And this concerns a video about reincarnation.
So basically, what we believe in is that in the very beginning, when God created Adam and he commanded the angels to prostrate to Adam, Iblis refused to. And he asked God for time before he was punished. He asked him to spare him a particular amount of time. And God spared him for that amount of time. And then Iblis promised that he will sit on the straight path in order that he may seduce the believers and lead them astray. Okay? So what this means for us is that Iblis would come and he would infiltrate the various teachings and paths and religions that were established by the prophets and the messengers in order to corrupt them. But there is no indication that he would create from his own self a new religion. Okay? So we believe that there were 124,000 prophets and messengers according to the narrations that were sent by God to the various peoples that lived on the globe throughout history. If God didn't send the people a messenger, they would have the right to object and protest on the day of judgment and said, God, we never knew. And because God is just, he sends them messengers. This is something which is present in the Quran. This is something which is present within Judaism and Christianity. All of the major religions believe in this concept. We also have narrations that state that the majority of the prophets and the messengers were unknown by their peoples. The peoples didn't recognize them necessarily as prophets and messengers. And so for us, we believe that Muhammad was a messenger and he was sent to all of the worlds. We believe that Jesus was a messenger and he was sent to the Israelites. So we believe in all of the Israelite prophets and messengers, like Moses, like Joshua, like David, like Solomon, all of them. We believe in the non-Israelite prophets such as Hud and Saleh, and we believe that Balaam ibn Ba'ura even was a prophet and he ended up going astray and losing his place. We believe that Adam was a prophet. We also believe that some of the other non-Abrahamic religions that are present today, that their origin was based off of the teachings of a particular prophet. For example, Buddhism. We believe that Buddha was a prophet, and there is actually a narration in one of the books that is held to high regard by the Shia that tells the story of Buddha and names him as being one of those prophets that were sent to the people of India and Pakistan, that region over there. And so Buddha was a prophet. We believe that Aristotle was a prophet. And I've mentioned several times this narration in which the Prophet Muhammad actually states that Aristotle was a prophet that was unknown to his people. We believe that Socrates and Plato, that they were also prophets and messengers. We believe that Pythagoras was a prophet and a messenger. We also believe, based off of the narrations, that there were people that were righteous people that lived at the time of Noah, that were companions of Noah, and that after they passed away, the people built these idols in their memory. And what happened is that afterwards, by many years, the people went astray and they begin to worship these individuals as gods rather than remembering them as prophets and messengers. And so we believe that what happened with the companions at the time of Noah, that this happened a lot throughout history, and that a lot of the so-called gods of ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, that these were real individuals that lived in particular time periods, but after their death by many, many generations, they became gods and their life stories got twisted and corruptions were added to it and they became somewhat legends, and then eventually they were worshipped. For example, we believe that Osiris was the same as Idris, was the same as Enoch, right? And that was an old prophet that existed before the time of Noah. And we believe the same thing to be true with Horus, and the same thing to be true with Zeus, and the same thing to be true about many of the ancient gods that existed. And so it's not that we're taking all of these religions and we're meshing them together, but rather we believe that they originally were one religion, one path, and that was the path of Adam and the original teachings that God gave him, and that during the life of every prophet and messenger, Satan, in order to lead the people astray, he ended up corrupting the teachings of that particular prophet and messenger. And we have in the narrations examples of this. So we find over and over again, it is stated that the devil would make appearances in the lives of the prophets and the messengers, particularly after their lifetime, in order that they lead the people astray. You have this very clear in the life of the Prophet Muhammad and the life of Imam Ali. After the Prophet Muhammad's death, Imam Ali is busy with burying the Prophet, and what does Satan do? He rushes to join a particular group of people that were agreeing on who should be the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, and they conspired to elect somebody else in the place of Imam Ali. They conspired to elect Abu Bakr. And the narrations state that Satan appeared in the image of an old man, and he was the very first person to pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr instead of Imam Ali, and to lead the people astray, right? So Satan he comes and he causes division amongst the members of a particular religion. He helps create offshoots and sects of people that reject and corrupt the teachings of the original prophet, but he doesn't create new religions altogether. There's no religion that in totality, in its origin, it was made by the devil, but rather it's always an offshoot or a break off of a particular path or a particular religion.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense. He was worshipping God before Adam was created. So he seems he has no problem with God himself, but he has problem with Adam and the new religion that God created through Adam.
Exactly. See, the test was in the command that God gave Satan to prostrate to Adam and to submit to him fully. Iblis didn't like that. He didn't like that there be a veil between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he wanted to worship God directly. And we find that that is actually the religion of Iblis. And so you will find his religion making appearances every time there is a breakup of particular sects off of the teachings of the original prophet or messenger. For example, you find in Christianity, the Protestants, they don't want that there be a pope. They don't want that there be a vicegerent or somebody who gives them commands, who acts as a veil between them and God. They hate that. They want to just have direct communication with Jesus. And for that reason, they also are following the same ideology as Iblis or Satan. The same thing happens in Islam. They break off after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. They don't want that there be imams or vicegerents that are infallible, that you have to obey. And so Sunni Islam is created by the rejection of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and you find now that the Sunni ideology is the same as the ideology of Iblis. They don't want somebody to be over them or to speak on behalf of God. They want that it ends with the Prophet Muhammad, and that they are left to think whatever it is that they want to think, and that they worship God directly, and that doesn't work. And so the same thing happened with the successors of Buddha, with the successors of Zoroaster, with the successors of Moses, with the successors of all of the prophets and messengers.
Wow. It answers a lot of questions, because there's all this movement, especially in the New Age, where they're reviving, for example, Hinduism and Buddhism, with this non-dual religion where you can connect directly with God, and God is inside you and God is everywhere. but there is no mention of a vicegerent. And it sounds good, it can even make you feel good, but at the end, that's scary because actually it's the religion of Iblis.
It is scary, but I don't think that I don't think that it's necessarily true that you cannot connect with God. I think that it is that God is available and He's able to connect with all of His creatures, and He gives them signs, and He gives them dreams, and those who depend on Him, He can guide them, and He can inspire them, and He can give them ideas. But this does not negate the fact that mankind needs that there be one voice, one enlightened person that the people can rally behind that would be a safety against the division of mankind. A voice that can make the final judgment so that there are no wars and that any disagreements can be solved and resolved between mankind. And so that's the thing, is that the New Age movements, they want to eliminate this voice. And the problem in the elimination of this voice is that the voice of God that is speaking to all of these various peoples is speaking different things, because it's not really God's voice. They're claiming it to be God's voice. They might think that it's God's voice, but really it's their own. A lot of the times it's their own ideas and their own opinions and their own likes and dislikes that comes out on their tongues, and therefore there's a lot of disagreement and confusion, and the truth is lost.
Thank you, Father.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Arnold.
Bless you.
Right.
Brother Arno is, look, when Brother Arno is around, he always has a very insightful question when he's in our gatherings. So it's only right that the question he asks the riser of the family of Muhammad is something that is such a door-opening experience.
It is. You know, it is. And I think that there is something very key that kind of stuck out for me when Abu Sadiq was speaking there, which I just wanted to bring up, which is that we were speaking earlier about obedience, and the fact that obedience has this very negative connotation in general. People equate obeying someone to losing your liberties, losing freedom. Now, when it comes to religion, or when it comes to following a call or a prophet or a messenger, it goes without saying that it includes and involves obedience. Obeying that prophet or obeying that messenger, obeying them in their teachings, in their analysis of right and wrong. They teach you how to be a moral person, and you must obey their teachings, otherwise you are not being moral. You're not being monotheistic. You're not being a true believer. And that's something that exists in Judaism and Christianity and in Islam, and it also is part of the Eastern religions. So now, keeping that in mind, what Abu Sadiq has pointed out in this segment is that without the unifying of the truths of religions, we will be led astray. Different religions would come, they would be true, and then they would get infiltrated and they would get corrupted. But why did they get infiltrated? They would get infiltrated because people would not obey the successor.
Yes.
But they want to obey the dead messenger. That's not an issue. They'll say, yeah, okay, fine, Jesus Christ, awesome, let's follow him.
When
Simon Peter, it's fine, we don't have to listen to him. We can criticize him, we can argue publicly like Paul did, and say like, nah, I know you're the church, I know you're Peter, the rock, but I don't want to really listen to you. Jesus is Lord and King. Well, if Jesus is Lord and King, then listen to Simon Peter. He said, listen to Simon Peter. Follow what he told you. Same with Islam. People are saying, okay, Muhammad is the greatest messenger ever, We obey Muhammad. Muhammad is no longer around, but we'll obey him. But when Muhammad appoints someone, no. We're not going to obey who he appointed. We're just going to elect our own leader, and he's going to be Abu Bakr. Now, what we're trying to reach here is what? It's that religions have truth. The Qaim comes, the Mahdi appears, he unifies the truths and says, you guys got lost because you didn't obey your successors, right? Now, I am the ultimate successor of all the prophets and messengers, and I'm telling you what the truth of Judaism was, of Christianity was, of Islam was, of everything, right? He even brought in the Eastern religions in that segment, and he brought in Zoroastrianism, and he brought in Buddhism and Hinduism, and Abu Sadiq is saying what? He's saying that, yes, there is a true religion, there is a source, there is a unifying source that we can point ourselves towards, and we can be true believers of God. But it requires obedience. And that's why it's actually it's a very touchy subject, because those who belittle obedience and they think that they can have a God without obeying the Adam of the time are following a very specific religion, and that is the religion of Iblis. They are following the religion of Satan.
Yes, this is a
however much they cover their hair, or they don't drink alcohol, or they observe the Sabbath, or they pray 5 times a day, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. It's interesting, Iblis appeared to give bay'ah to Abu Bakr, and Imam Ali alayhi salam says he was that man with the biggest callus on his forehead.
And this is found in the narrations of the Shia books, by the way. It's a very, very interesting part of the history. So there you go. The idea is what? The idea is there is one religion. The true religion is not a religious soup, as you might have seen on the thumbnail of that particular video. It's not just a collection of different ideas. Some people have accused the Ahmadi religion of peace and light as being just an amalgamation of different ideas from different religions. No, the fact is that you don't believe in God, and you don't believe that truth is infinite, and you don't believe that it has to continue. And it is, and it will. You cannot resist it. It will continue, and it is eternal, right? Yep. But you can't hold on to it without obeying the successor. That's just the fact of the matter.
Yes. The fact of the matter is that this is not a quote unquote syncretic religion where we're just piecemealing things together in order to get as many people to convert and taking their resources and money for our own personal gain. This is not what's going on. This is what the accusation is towards us. But like Sister Alia said, there's one uniting light from the messengers that came from the same God, and the principal things that connect and unify the religions is what Abba Sadiq is pointing out. He is pointing out something that is present in all the religions, and this thing that unifies them is what we are building on to call all people, not just a certain group of people, but all of humanity is invited to feast at the table of the 7th covenant.
Absolutely. And no matter what people might think, no matter how negative they might see it, obedience is part of the deal, because it always has been. I really strongly recommend for anyone who thinks that it's wrong to say that we must obey a vicegerent of God, I strongly recommend that you go ahead and you check out your own religious scriptures and you see for yourselves, is it possible to be a Jew and disobey Moses? Is it possible to be a Christian and disobey Jesus Christ? Is it possible to be a Muslim and disobey Muhammad? It's not. You have to do what they say. You have to listen to what they're giving. And it hasn't changed. It's still the same thing now. The only problem, the only strange problem, which I find so fascinatingly strange, is exactly what Abba Sadiq pointed out, which is people are very happy to obey a dead messenger. I don't know why. I don't know what the inclination is towards that. I'm sure there's some psychological reason for it that maybe you can analyze for us later, Dr. Irfan. But why would people want to follow a dead messenger? I don't know. I would much rather follow the living messenger, because now I can understand things from him better, you know?
Yeah, it's a tremendous phenomenon. Yeah, it's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah. Now, coming up next, we've got a few more segments that are contributions by various believers. There was a segment that, well, how about we just play it, actually? We'll play it and we'll discuss it right after. So let's go ahead. Yeah, let's just play anything that's coming up next. They're all about the same topic anyway.
Yeah. Common theme.
Okay, does everybody want to know what the real word was? Yeah. Okay, the will of Prophet Muhammad. As you see with your own eyes now through the demonstration of the game Chinese Whispers, how one word can be changed within a setting of a little game that we play on a day-to-day basis. And how about the religion of God distorted throughout time and history, and people expected to stay the same? And therefore, the world needs a living Imam, and that voice today is Abba Sadiq from Muslims.
That was an interesting little social experiment.
Yes.
So the idea behind it was basically what? It's the idea of how messages get distorted through time.
Distortion of messages.
And therefore, what do we need? A living messenger. It keeps going back to the same point.
Yes, let's please follow the living messenger. You know why people want to love Prophet Muhammad after he passes away? Because now he has disappeared, that focal point has gone, and we can go directly to God. Yes, Prophet Muhammad, Umar al-Khattab said, the Quran is enough for us. Thank you, we have the Book of Allah. Goodbye, Prophet Muhammad. Thanks for all your contributions. We no longer need you anymore. This is literally what he said.
Sentiment.
Yeah, he said this, and this is the mentality of the... Did it work? Now, that's a question for our audience to ponder and contemplate. Look around you, did it work?
Which Islam? I find it so interesting when people, and Abu Sadiq mentioned it recently because someone sent in a question in a comment and they said return to Jesus. They were advising Abu Sadiq to return to Jesus, ironically considering the fact that Jesus is with Abu Sadiq. And Abu Sadiq said, which Christianity do you want me to follow? I mean, what are you even talking about? There is no one set Christian idea. There is no one set Muslim idea. How can we know which one to follow?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. Muslims do the same thing. They'll come and say, this is kufr, return back to Islam. And they say it with this lens that says, I am this kind of Muslim, and this kind of Muslim is the be-all, end-all of all Islam, and everything else doesn't exist because this is happening to me, which is a very main character syndrome issue going on here. You think it's all about you, but it's not. There's a lot more happening in the world. So yeah, we need a messenger, otherwise what happens is distorted messaging.
Yes, lots of distortions, and this happens through these process of Chinese whispers that we just saw. This is what I thought it was really well put together there, and the idea is very well taught, and this is why there has to be a correction. I mean, just try it for yourself. Put 10 people in a chain and get a one sentence across to the other person and see if it comes out the right way.
Yep.
If there's not at least one or two distorted words, then there are often more sometimes. And now imagine over centuries, over millennia. I mean, it'll come out as a completely different sentence altogether. This is exactly what happened, and this is why, again, as you put it earlier, this is why a living imam is necessary.
Yes, and we have other Ansar who have actually contributed to Rise Up. We've got Sister Khadija who has had something very important to say, and I think we should go ahead and play that and then discuss it right after.
He does not come with an army, he comes with a voice, with words that cut like knives, because they strike a wound everyone knows. The man of God, he speaks for God against the world, and the world responds with mockery, with slander, with hate. A wave of videos and commentary has flooded the internet since Abdullah Hashim Abu Sadiq, from whom his peace, delivered his speech a day after the Pope's death, in which he declared himself the true Pope, that no one but the man chosen by God has the right to rule, spiritually and politically. A day after the believers in the Ahmadi religion of peace and light raised the black banners in St. Peter's Square, inscribed with the words, "Allegiance is to Allah." Since the beginning of history, societies have responded to prophetic figures with the same rejection, not because of reasoned doubt, but out of instinctive self-defense. The man of God doesn't just ask questions, he challenges us everything. That's why he becomes a target, then and now. The Bible, Quran, Torah, and the Bhagavad Gita don't just tell the story of spiritual leaders, they also show how society turned against them. Prophets were mocked, slandered, and treated like criminals. They reflected people's fear, envy, and unwillingness to face the truth. And today, the people still follow these same old patterns towards the man of God today. In the Torah, Moses is doubted by his own people. Who made you ruler and judge over us? They ask when he tries to mediate between the two Hebrews. This question, brimming with distrust and defiance, follows his entire mission. Moses, who speaks with God, remains a suspect in the eyes of his people. Later, he watches them build a golden calf at the very moment he is receiving God's law on Mount Sinai. This is the tragedy of the prophetic experience. While the prophet wrestles with God, the people replace God with an idol. Today, there may be no golden calf, but the pattern remains. Man-made systems dominate every domain. In the New Testament, Jesus is accused of being a liar and a blasphemer. We have a law, and by that law he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God. But it did not end there. He was called a gluttonous and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. and his powers were demonized. The people spread lies and attacked Jesus' character, a form of what we now call character assassination. Noah too was mocked when he began to build the ark. In the Quran it says, "And every time a group of his people passed by him, they ridiculed him. They ridiculed Muhammad, peace be upon him, stating this is nothing but a madman. But every time the people were wrong. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. The very man sent by God today is being mocked and slandered just like in the past. The man of God speaks not against us, but for us, against what we have become, so we may become what we are meant to be. Until then, the words of Jesus remain true. A prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home."
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that was a very well put together segment. And I was thinking while it was playing that there is something very unique about the time with the Qaim, which isn't seen in the previous times. And that is that it is the world of social media. It is the global village age that we're living in. And in this day and age, the message of God is spreading like wildfire across the planet, and that has never happened before. But with that comes also the negative. The negative attention or the attacks and the persecution that we face is also on a global scale, and that's very, very unique to any other call of any other messenger or prophet that's ever happened. Those who might say now, well, it does happen to Muslims across the world or Christians across the world, I'm saying in the time of the living messenger himself. Abu Sadiq is the messenger of this day and age. Yeah. And while he is living in this day and age, globally speaking, there are those who are embracing the call, but there are also those who are attacking, mocking, harassing, abusing. And it's not from a particular people. It's not in a particular location. It's worldwide. So the pressure is on. It's a lot to take. It's a lot that's happening. I think that's something to really contemplate over and think about. This is a very intense time we're in. It's a very intense religion right now. It's a very intense moment. And the heat is just going higher and higher. We're going towards something big. So, yeah, buckle up, I guess.
Yeah, buckle up. Well put. I mean, this is it. We're on a crazy journey towards something that is inevitable. Now, it's very interesting. I think the topic of monotheism has really been sparked within me after all these different conversations about the Imam, what he represents, the fact that monotheism, Tawheed, is divine unity in the belief that there is one God in one time that reflects God's attributes in the creation, and how we should all be focused on Him. And in focusing on Him, we can bring about that revolution of consciousness and love and abundance and peace and prosperity and all those things that we imagine when we think of a utopia. All that good stuff is coming. There's so much good stuff. If people only knew, if they had a sliver of faith in the vision that Abu Sadiq has provided us. He said you can create the Garden of Eden on earth now. We don't have to die and go there in our minds. It's something that is achievable here right now. And in fact, the Garden of Eden was, surprise, surprise, breaking news, on planet Earth at one time.
The state of Adam, the narrations say that Eden was the state of Adam. I think that's so fascinating to think about. There are two states, a state of Iblis and a state of Adam. And if you're not in Eden, then you're living under the rule of the devil.
Yeah. This is why the devil was the one who led them out through his deception, and he is a PhD in deception. And we are saying that don't fall into the same traps that your parents and grandparents and ancestors fell in. The examples are there. And while the Prophet Messenger is alive, he's a madman, he's being attacked, and then 200, 300 years after his passing, he is being worshipped as God in creation. It's weird.
It's so strange.
It's also a reason to not follow his successor, because now they're like, well, look, the one we believe in, he's died, but he was the truth, and you're a liar. And the reason why you're a liar is because
you're alive.
You're alive.
No, really, that is it.
This is the bitter truth. This is the reality. This is what we're seeing on the ground.
And the labels that we hear are insane: madman, magician, gluttonous. Liar, deceiver. I was talking to one of the believers here recently, and I've mentioned this before, but the comment section is a whole reality in and of itself. It's like going into another world.
Yeah, right.
You know, if you want to like escape this world, go into the comment section of our videos, and you'll find a very fascinating phenomenon, which is, it is a very polarizing subject, the fact that the Mahdi has appeared. You will hardly ever find normal comments like you do in other videos, where you'll find someone saying something like, oh, I like the lighting in this video, or something like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting fact. I'll look into that. You don't find comments like that. You'll either find comments which say, Labbaik Abu Sadiq, we believe in you, I've pledged my allegiance, I love this man, I love this teaching, I love this religion. Or you'll find the opposite. Deceiver, wrong, cultist, lies. And you know what, this is so fascinating to me, because I was speaking to one of the believers, as I said earlier, and they were saying it's so funny because they'll go to a comment that says in caps lock, it's always in caps lock, lies, okay? Just the word lies. And I'm not sure what they're trying to say, because what Abu Sadiq will be saying is something like a fact, you know, there'll be a short or a clip about a fact, like in the Quran there's this verse that says such and such and such, and then they're like, lies, it is there, I'm sorry, it's not a lie.
Right.
And then the brother I was speaking to, he'll be like, I'll comment under and say, what is the lie? Can you please point the lie out? They will never respond back. No one will tell us what these lies are. It's just the word lies. It's like a strange Tourette's kind of issue.
Yeah, stimulus
you know
response.
What I'm saying? Yeah, it really is.
There's no thought.
No thought put into it, just lies. Deceiver. Just like the people of old would do with Jesus Christ, you know. Yeah, it's sad.
It's sad to see history repeating itself again.
Yeah, and at the same time, we know that there are those who support, and we know that there are those who believe, and we know that there are people who are approaching us and saying, we believe in Abu Sadiq. And we always ask them, what made you want to pledge your allegiance? What is it that pulled you in? And a lot of times people are saying to us, we want to believe in him because this man is being persecuted. This man is being attacked, and he has to be from God. Why would people be so against his teachings when his teachings are so pure and so good? Therefore, I want to pledge my allegiance to him. I want to dedicate my life to him. I want to put on my neck the allegiance itself. Can you imagine what allegiance really means? Is you're selling yourself to God. That's what it means. That's what it means to make the shahada in Islam. You say, my soul belongs to God. And they're saying, we believe that Abu Sadiq is that messenger. We believe in the banner he is raising. Why? Because people are oppressing him, because people are misunderstanding him, because he's clearly sent by the prophets and messengers. He's being treated exactly the same way. And this negativity that people are spewing out is actually bringing more people into the call, because that's how God works. As it says in the Holy Quran, they plan and God plans, and God is the best of planners.
Yes, God is the best of planners. He is the perfect planner. And everything that God plans has goodness in it. And ultimately, God is also the victorious planner.
Absolutely. We can probably squeeze in one last segment. Shall we do that?
Yeah, I think we can. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's go ahead to Sister Saiha's segment, a closer look at religion, and we'll be right back.
Throughout the ages, countless people have claimed to follow Jesus. Churches rise in his name. Scriptures are read aloud in his memory. But to truly follow him, we must understand and obey the structure he established. We begin with a stern warning from Jesus, directed not to pagans or outsiders, but to the religious leaders of his time. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witnessed against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Jesus exposes the deception of their hearts. They honor the past prophets, yet prepare to kill the ones God sends to them in their own day. He continues, therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute them from town to town. It is a divine pattern. God sends and the people reject. And in that rejection, they think they are preserving their religion, yet they are cutting themselves off from God. So Jesus gave his disciples a clear principle. a divine command that cannot be ignored. Whoever receives you receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. And again, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. To receive the disciples is to receive Jesus, and to receive Jesus is to receive the Father. This is not symbolic, it is a clear truth. The one who receives a prophet because he's a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. But Jesus went further. Among all his disciples, he appointed Simon Peter to be the foundation of his church, the visible authority of the kingdom on earth. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. This was a divine appointment. Jesus gave Peter authority over the church, and through Peter and the apostles chosen by Jesus, the teachings and judgments of Christ would be made known to the world. So every Christian, if they are truly Christian, must receive and obey Simon Peter and the true disciples of Jesus. This was not a suggestion, this was a commandment from Jesus Christ himself. And to reject them, Scripture gives us the answer. In the first epistle of John, it is written, "Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son." How does one deny the Father and the Son? By rejecting the one sent in their name. For Jesus said, "Whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me." So the one who rejects Simon Peter and the true disciples, the appointed witnesses of Christ, is denying both the Son and the Father. And that, according to the Scripture, is the spirit of the Antichrist. It is not enough to say, "I believe in Jesus." Many in history have said the same, even as they rejected his living representatives. That very rejection is proof that their faith is false. The truth is clear. To accept Jesus is to accept the ones he sends. To follow him is to follow his appointed ones. And to reject them is to reject God himself. This is the command every true Christian must fulfill.
I really love how everything is coming back full circle today in the episode. Saiha said something very important. She says to follow the messenger is to follow the one he appoints. And you can't pick and choose, right? It doesn't make sense. You really cannot just say, okay, I believe in a leader, I believe in a ruler, I believe in a messenger. But when he appoints a man, I'm not feeling it, I'm just going to discard that. It is not going to work like that. And it doesn't. And if people wonder, hey, why are there so many denominations in Christianity? Why are there so many sects in Islam? Why did Prophet Muhammad ﷺ say that the nation that belongs to him will end up following the footsteps of the nations before, step by step, to the extent that they would fall into the same lizard hole, right, that the nations before fell into? Okay? Why did he say that? There's a very, very simple answer. It's because the nations of old and the nation of Muhammad ﷺ have one major flaw in common, and that's that they rejected the successors. If they had held on to their successors, they wouldn't have had this issue. They really wouldn't. Why would they? There would be a focal point to follow. There'd be someone to ask questions from. But when you don't have a focal point, what happens? You read the book, you understand something, somebody else reads the book, they understand something else. Now people become scholars. They start reading and interpreting and deciding, and then everyone is coming and asking different scholars of religion about different things. Those scholars start giving names to their schools of thought. That's how sects are created. And then it's out of control. Now it's too late. You cannot go back. You can't turn back the clock and say, I take it back, I'm going to accept Ali ibn Abi Talib because obviously he was selected. It's unfortunate, but Abu Bakr was not appointed by God. It's difficult for Sunnis to take that, but it is a fact. It's historically accurate. You cannot deny that it happened, that he was elected, but that doesn't make it right.
Correct.
That doesn't make it okay. And it takes courage to say that Paul was wrong. It takes courage to say that Umar ibn al-Khattab was a usurper of the throne. It's difficult, but it's necessary. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to fix the wrongs of today. And we're going to think it's not a big deal. We don't have to have an imam of the time. We don't have to have a successor. At the moment, Muslims are functioning like that. They don't have an imam of the time. And that completely defies the meaning of the word Muslim. Because Muslim comes from Islam, right? Islam means what? It means submission to the divinely appointed caliph in your day and age. So who is the divinely appointed caliph of your day and age? Who is it? Do you have one? Maybe you don't have one. We say there is one, it's Abdullah Hashim Abu Sadiq. We'd like to know who you think it is.
Yeah.
Fair question.
Call in and give us your caliph in your time, you know, and tell us why you believe in him and on what basis.
Yes.
And use scripture. And the more the merrier. You know, we want to hear from the people why they believe what they believe is something. It's a trait of a human being to be able to explain why they believe what they believe, because otherwise you are just following in the footsteps of people and completely unconscious of your own reality and about your own life and your own decision-making process. You have to know why you believe what you believe. This is something every human being should do at least once in their life when they really think things through and reach your own conclusions, because ultimately no one can carry your yoke for you, no matter how much the non-working scholars say that they can. The only thing they can do is lead you to a particular destination, and it's not a good place to be at the end of it all, but you are the one who walks through that door that has to make that choice, and this is something every human being is responsible for their own souls.
Yeah. I think that today's topic had a lot of themes in it, but it all comes back to the same thing, monotheism. How do you be a true monotheist? What does it mean to have a focal point? Think about that, contemplate over the things that we say, please, and please reach out. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to know what it is that you're taking from us. How are you receiving the information that we're giving here? And I guess we can
reach
call it a
out
wrap.
to outreach.
Reach out to outreach. It's a great slogan. T-shirt idea.
We need a new cup with that, maybe on the other side.
You know what? That would be an amazing, amazing cup. I want a cup like that.
Then I'll be an honorary member of the outreach team as well.
You always are welcome, Dr.
Throw me in there.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up now, I guess, today's episode. Thank you for tuning in, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.